Hey guys, it's Casey and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to tonight's topic, which is one that I don't think anybody has ever specifically asked for on my channel, even though I have mentioned it in passing once or twice. I mean, they might have asked for it. I just don't recall anybody asking for it. But if they did, they're very, very lucky because it just so happens to be the topic that I want to discuss tonight, and this is my channel. So tonight, we will be unpacking the very brief but colorful period of time in which I performed extreme body modification surgeries. And when I say extreme body modification surgeries, I'm talking tongue splits and subdermal implants and surgical ear removals. I did it all, and I don't anymore, but we're still going to talk about it. So the very first thing that anybody ever asks when I bring this little fun tip-it up in the 2 facts 1 lie game is, why? Why did you do it in the first place? Why did you stop? Did something go wrong? Did you get sued? Was there a cult? The straight answer that I usually give to these kind of questions is that it wasn't sustainable, which is 100% true. It wasn't. Not financially, not physically, and not legally in many, many jurisdictions. It was the kind of work that devoured hours of your time and messed up your sleep cycle and turned your phone into a vibrating graveyard of messages from people inquiring how much it would cost to remove 3 ribs so that they could feel real or something. Now, if you're watching this video and thinking to yourself that I seem like the very last person on the entire face of the planet to ever be involved in extreme body modifications because I look like a Catholic schoolgirl, I don't blame you. You're not wrong. I have no tattoos. I have normal colored hair and a normal cut. I don't even have any piercings, not so much as my ears, which, mind you, is not from a lack of trying. I have pierced my ears, or at least attempted to pierce my ears on several different occasions, and each time my body has completely rejected it. It has been like, get this foreign body out of me. And it doesn't matter how well I clean them and take care of them, it doesn't want any part of it. My immune system is melodramatic and uncooperative, which is also the reason why I have no tattoos. It's not because I'm anti-art, it's because everybody has that one thing that they hate about the human body. Like, some people hate snot, and some people hate saliva, and some people hate vomit. For me, I hate infected tattoos. They are absolutely horrifying. If you've never seen one before, don't look them up. They're disgusting. They look like, in The Last of Us, the clickers with those flower things growing out of their face, they look like that. And if I was to have one on my body, I think that I would just simply pass away. Which, unfortunately for me, given where I live and the people who live here, I encounter them more often than you may think, and I want to die every single time that I see them. Like, I have a thing about skin infections in general, but I can deal with, like, psoriasis. Like, I can suck it up for psoriasis, but when it comes to infected tattoos, I cannot even make eye contact. And it often is eye contact because a lot of people get, like, faces tattooed and then they get infected, and it's not nice. I hate it so much. That said, I do actually have one body modification that you can kind of see depending on the lighting and how much I'm talking. Well, actually, no, you can't see it that well regardless anymore because I broke this tooth like 3 or 4 months ago. But this tooth, the other one that's broken at the top, it has been modified. It has been serrated on the inside edge. Because when I was 18, I spent several months living on the road with a platoon of what were essentially stateless anarchists who, amongst their very many charming habits, were very much into rough and tumble brawling. And for community bonding purposes, not just for fun, but for community bonding purposes, they were into rough and tumble brawling. And so a few of them, in pursuit of this bond, had reinforced and reshaped their teeth to have better surface value during a fight. And I had already broken my tooth a year earlier, and it was in desperate need of resurfacing because it was a constant risk of breaking even further whenever I bit into anything hard. So it needed a lot of work done, and it needed a lot of work done pretty quickly, and we weren't in a position to go see a normal dentist. So when the opportunity presented itself, like, they were doing their teeth and I was watching them and they asked if I wanted it done, I was like, yeah, why the hell not? I will get it done. What is there to lose? I need to get my tooth done anyway. So I got it done, and now it's like a blade edge along my tooth. Like, it's very, very sharp. It can rip and tear very, very well. And it's a neat little souvenir that I have from my youth, which I don't know if you can really, like, it is a body modification, obviously, but it's also very practical. Like, it's something that needed to be done. So I don't know if you want to count that or if you don't, but it's something that I have, and I'm Like, I've never wanted to get it fixed. I want to get the other tooth fixed as soon as I possibly can. And I've gone to the dentist. I'm like, I want to get this tooth fixed, but I don't want this tooth fixed. I want this tooth to be left alone. And they just look at me like I'm an idiot. As for how I ended up performing the surgeries myself, that was not something that I ever sought out. It was something that found me. Like, it was fate at first sight. So if you're new here, you've never seen one of my videos before, I was trained in medicine under a completely different system than the one that you're used to. And in my opinion, it is a far superior and more effective system than the bloated, bureaucratic, debt-producing maze that is the contemporary modern West education system. But that is a completely different video. When you go to these medical schools, and I'm using the royal you here for anybody in the modern West who has attended medical school or has ever showed any interest in attending medical school or whatever. And I'm also using medical school in air brackets because you waste the best years of your life. You waste your entire youth going to these medical schools without ever actually learning anything of practical value within it. But again, that is a completely different video. I'm not going to get into it today because I can literally go on about it for hours, and that's not what this video is about. But you go to these colleges and these unis and you go to daily tutorials and daily lectures and you take exams, blah, blah, blah. You do it for years and years and years, and then you graduate with a bachelor's degree, never having interacted with a patient in any meaningful capacity. Whatever. But the medical system that I was trained under is more reminiscent of your PhD programs rather than your undergraduate programs, in that you would go to the university 5-6 times a year for seminars, and they would, be 3-4 day seminars. But that would be it. The rest of the time you're doing real life, practical, hands-on training, paid training, by the way, under a mentor. The educational system is relevant to the story, believe it or not, and so I'm just going to give you a really, really quick an easy rundown of how it functioned. So after finishing your standardized education, which was usually between the ages of 13 and 16, depending on where you lived, for me it was 16, you would then submit your career proposal plan to the training committee. And depending on your grades and your civil standing, so if you had a clean civil record, they would look at all that and they would either approve or deny it. And if it was approved, as it often was, more often than not, it was approved, you would then go into an apprenticeship style training scheme. After that, you essentially had two options. You could find your own mentor, which involved writing lots of letters and sending them off and pitching yourself and hoping that you'd find a working professional willing to take you on. Or you could go to the university and undertake a foundation year in which you learned everything that you would learn anyway. And if you passed that successfully, they would find you and match you with a mentor. Both paths were viable, but unsurprisingly, because some things never change no matter where you are in life, the easiest option was nepotism, which is the path that I took. Probably wondering right now why any working professional would ever agree to take on just random children as their apprentices. Well, they had no choice on the matter. It was their civic duty. This was a socialist society, and this was just how things were done. And if you didn't want to take on apprentices as a professional, then you didn't have to, but you would be taxed violently and aggressively through the arse and be socially side-eyed for the rest of oblivion. Because this was just a safety net put in place to ensure that no knowledge was ever gate-kept. Like, it was always available to whoever was going to make best use of it. And there was an expectation that you would help pull other people up the ladder behind you. You wouldn't just slam it shut. And if that is what you wanted to do, again, that was completely fine. If you wanted to be a gatekeeping jackass, you could do that, but you had to pay royally for the privilege of being so. But anyway, like I said, I was a nepo. My mother was a doctor, and so at least on paper, I did the first 3 years of my training under her mentorship. And by the time that I moved out of home, which I did when I was like 18, 19, I had already logged more hands-on training hours in the flesh than most second-year residents will in the modern West. After I moved out of home, I moved into my best friend's house, and he lived in what was essentially a glorified national park. Like, this town was small and it was remote, very, very remote. There was like 500 people in the entire region. And there was no permanent doctor. There was no full hospital access. There was barely even a post office. It was a very, very small place to be living. So when I moved there, because I already had so many years of training and I had a clean record, at least on paper, I was granted an exemption to practice medicine full-time, unsupervised there, even though I wasn't fully licensed yet. Because, again, they had no doctor, and apparently, the needs of the community outweigh bureaucratic purity. So I was allowed to act as their doctor. The terms of my exemption were pretty standard. I had to attend, I think it was 4 yearly seminars at the university I attended, which was fine. Like, that was standard. That actually had nothing to do with my exemption. That was just something that I had to do regardless for my university, for my licensing. I had to attend seminars a certain number of times a year. And in this case, it was 4, which in theory sounds very, very easy on paper. But in practice, it was a real pain in the ass because, again, at this point in time, I have moved countries. I have moved to my friend's country. I'm living there in the middle of nowhere. And my university did not move countries. And so every time I had to attend a seminar, it included international travel and visa checks and interacting with people that I really didn't want to be interacting with. So it was a big deal. The second requirement that I had for my exemption was that I had to have a mentor in the capital city who I would go to every 4 to 6 weeks for a long weekend. So 3 days every 4 to 6 weeks, I would have to go and work with him so he could observe my skills and correct me on what I'm doing wrong and do it this way instead of this way and, normal stuff like that, which actually in practice was a lot more manageable than going to the different country because my husband had a house in the city, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was still really, really annoying. Because you have to keep in mind that at this point in time, I am running my own clinic as a doctor in the middle of nowhere. I'm managing patient care and I'm doing triage and I'm chasing bears out of the waiting room, which is something that I had to do on multiple occasions. And so having to pack all that in when I had no one to hand the reins over to and hopping across the country to the capital city every month or so was a big, big deal. Anyway, I have been on this roller coaster for a few months at this point, and I have just completed one of these long weekend stints. I have been there for 3 days in the capital city, and now I am packing up to go home. And as I'm doing so, my mentor, who up until this point has been completely indifferent to my entire existence, he pipes up and he asks me, "Is it true that you live where you live?" And I was like, yes, I do indeed live where I live, fully expecting him to, break into a lecture about the dangers of being a young woman living in such an isolated community, especially the one that I did live in. But no, instead his eyes light up in that very specific way that is unique to middle-aged men who are about to say something that they think is very, very clever. And here is where I feel like I should mention that my best friend comes from a specific ethnic group, and they have a lot of distinct customs. And one of those customs is scarification. So if you don't know what scarification is, and I'm going to assume that you do because you clicked on this video in the first place with the title being what I'm going to title it, which I don't know yet, but I'm assuming that it has something to do with body modifications. So you've clicked on this video, so I'm going to assume that you know what scarification is. But just in case, scarification is the ritual carving of skin. And not the type that you see on like Tumblr or National Geographic. No, this was very intricate, very highly skilled ceremonial work. So in the case of my best friend's people, they do scarification universally. Every single person has it done twice. So they get it done initially in very early childhood. I've sat here for a while trying to remember the exact age the scarification ceremony takes place, and I keep landing on 3, but I'm not 100% certain that it is 3. They mask at 3. I know that for a fact. And I think that's why I'm thinking of 3. But I don't remember the exact age. But it's in very, very early childhood. So we're just going to say they get it done initially in very early childhood. And then they get it done at 16 and have it finished in that second ceremony. So that is the way that they go about scarification. It's something that every single member of their ethnic group has. And it sounds barbaric. And it might be barbaric, because I am actually very much against like little babies getting their ears pierced in this day and age and in this culture, because I don't think it's necessary. Like, I think it's something that children should be able to choose for themselves when they understand what they're choosing with consent and knowledge. However, I feel like this is a little bit different because it is so culturally ingrained into the society that it's not something that a member is ever going to regret getting. They're going to regret not having it, which I don't feel is the same thing with child ear piercing, because when people say these days, oh, it was a cultural thing, it's not a cultural thing if you are living in America where, 3% of children under the age of 5 have their ears pierced. It's not a cultural thing. It might be, ancestrally a cultural thing, but I don't think that's an excuse for getting it done here and now. But in their culture, it is very much a universal thing. Everybody has it done. And if you don't have it done, you're going to be excluded. You're going to have a lot of problems going forward. And so it's something that needs to be done. And so despite my reservations about babies getting the ears pierced, I turned a blind eye. So their scarification was not keloid dependent in the way that a lot of other similar traditions are, especially on darker skin tones where it's less of like a shape and more of a cross-stitched pattern when they do their scarifications. Theirs was very fine-lined and very delicate. And after, it was finished, they would pack it with red pigment, which would stain the scars permanently. It was very, very beautiful and very, very technically advanced. And at this point in time, when my mentor was inquiring about it, I had seen it performed in the flesh maybe 4 or 5 times. And it was always done by the exact same woman, and it was always done with immense care and tradition and cultural ceremony. And I had never performed it. I never would perform it. I never have to this day come close to performing it because it was cultural and I was not part of that culture. But my mentor wasn't actually interested in this. He didn't care at all about the scarification process in and of itself. He was more fascinated by the fact that I wasn't horrified by what I was saying, that I was happy to explain all of this to him and go into detail about what was happening there without flinching. And so once he confirmed that I wasn't squeamish or moralizing, he made me an offer. He's like, when you come to the city on these weekends, are you perhaps interested in earning a little bit more money under the table? And I was like, yes, of course I am. Not because I needed the money. I most definitely didn't, because my husband was like raking it in. Like I had no need for any more money in my life whatsoever. But as I've said on many, many videos, when I was younger, I was not mentally all there. And I think at this point in my life, I had a touch of oppositional defiance disorder, just a little smidge. And so anything that was like illegal or I wasn't supposed to be doing or, was frowned upon by the greater society, because again, this is a socialist society, so antisocial behavior was like public enemy number 1. Anything like that, I wanted in on. I wanted to see how it functioned. And so I was like, yes, of course I want to be taking this opportunity. And so I got inducted into his little under the table surgical program, which of course, given the title of the video, you've probably like deduced was body modification. But this was not like standard body modification. This was not cosmetic surgery through licensed hospitals. This was hardcore DIY after hours theatre. I'm talking subdermal implants and tongue splitting and fish hooks and branding and ear etching. You name it, we did it. So over the next 18-ish months, I performed about 40 of these procedures during my long weekends with my mentor. And some of them were very complex while others were more simple, but they were all very intimate and very real and also very, very fun, because I really and genuinely do enjoy spending time with alternative people. I enjoyed their company at home and I also enjoy their company here, which is saying something because I don't enjoy the company of really anybody here. But in my experience, interacting with alternative people, I find them to be incredibly, incredibly kind, which is really impressive, especially here in the modern West, because despite a very loud, be kind message, I don't think a lot of people embody that. But I have met several alternative people who really and truly do embody that. And despite being amongst the most heavily judged demographics in the world, I think they consistently demonstrate what may actually be amongst the last true expressions of loyalty and community and mutual aid left in the entire world, to the degree that I don't think you see outside of a tribal system. For all the pearl clutching about their appearances, for all, the jokes and the stares and the Facebook threads full of comments from people's angry uncles screaming about attention-seeking behavior, they really do show up. They show up for each other, they show up for outsiders, and they show up for the people in society who are at danger of falling through the cracks. They house each other, they feed each other, they remember each other's birthdays, they hold vigils when one of them dies, and they never seem to do this with any incentive beyond just genuine, wholehearted, altruistic care. I've never seen, and this is saying something in today's modern societies, but I've never seen anybody from an alternative background care about holding each other's emotional labor. Like they don't say, oh, I don't owe you anything. Like you can't put that on me. You can't trauma dump on me. No, they really hold space from each other. And I'm very, very impressed with their communities. So yes, I enjoyed the work that I did. I enjoyed the company. I enjoyed the intimacy of it. I enjoyed being able to watch somebody become more themselves, to carve into their flesh the way that they wanted to do it in order to say, yes, watch me become who I was always ultimately supposed to be. So, why did I stop doing it? First of all, I am not a surgery girly. I have never been a surgery girly. I do not have the greatest dorexity in the world. So that is definitely a contributing factor of why I decided to no longer pursue these kind of surgeries. But it is not the full story, because the reality of the situation is that I am a rural and remote emergency medicine specialist. That is my specialty. That is what I do. So I am very competent. I do not enjoy it. It's not something I like doing, but I am very competent with a scalpel and making my way around a surgical theatre if I have to be. I can remove an appendix in a pinch with no problem. Like I am competent. I can manage with what I do. So not being a surgical girly is not the reason specifically why I stopped. The core of the issue, and I think the real reason why I stopped performing extreme body mods, is that I think there is a gap, a very small fine line gap between somebody being a part of an alternative community and wanting a modification as an identification as part of that community, and body modifications as an expression of severe mental illness and being used as a form of self-harm. Because there is a gap between body modification as a form of self-expression and body modification as a form of self-erasure, between personal transformation and disassociation, as well as between aesthetic alignment and pathology. Because it's one thing to fulfill somebody's dream of implanting a silicone horn to complete their devil aesthetic, but there is a completely different kettle of fish when somebody walks in wanting a split tongue and an ink sclera and subdermal armor plating and full sensory deprivation wiring, all done in a single session, because, they're just so sick and tired of living their life in a body that feels like it belongs to somebody else. And so you really need to be careful of not crossing that fine line. And it is a very, very fine line between respecting somebody's self-expression and liberation and annihilation. And that is not unique to extreme body mods. I hold that exact same opinion towards traditional plastic surgery. Take rhinoplasty, for example. If you are going through life with a nose that is truly causing you distress, if you cannot take photos, if you can't go on dates, if you cannot live the life that you want to live because of your nose, get a nose job. There's no shame in that. Get it done. Like, personally, I think that big, beautiful noses, unique noses, add so much character to the face. But if you cannot look in a mirror without bursting into tears by what you see, go and get it done. Life is way too short to be living in such misery over something that is so easily fixed. But if you have an objectively normal nose, a nose that nobody comments on, that causes you no problems, and yet it is your biggest insecurity, that is not a nose problem, that is a mind problem. And you don't need a plastic surgeon, you need a therapist. Because surgery can't fix that problem for you. Like, sure, you might be happy for a few weeks, maybe even for a few months, but eventually that insecurity is going to start seeping in again. It will just be transferred to a different part of your body, to your eyelids, to your chin, to your thighs. It is never going to stop. It's just going to be a never-ending cycle of surgery to fix this problem. I feel happy. Suddenly I'm depressed again. I need surgery to fix this problem instead. And that is how people end up botched. It's got nothing to do with bad surgeons. It's got everything to do with the fact that the people getting these surgeries are doing it in an attempt to quiet the voice in their heads by fixing something that doesn't need fixing on their bodies. That's exactly where I found myself over and over and over again doing these surgeries. I was dealing with people who weren't going to benefit from these surgeries that I'm performing on them. What they would have benefited from was a very good therapist. Every so often, I would end up with somebody who was the real deal, somebody with clarity, somebody with reason, somebody with thought and precision, somebody who had been part of the old community for their entire adult life and had thought out and designed their mod that they wanted down to the last millimeter. These people were never trying to run from themselves. They were simply trying to match what was on the inside with what was on the outside. And I loved working with those clients. If I could work with those clients every day, I would still be doing it because I truly believe they are the last true futurists. But they were the minority. The majority weren't coming in with intention. They were coming in with despair that they wanted to cover up. You had people begging to have their vocal cords removed because they hated the sound of their own voices. And then you had people removing their very healthy teeth, not for dentures, not for aesthetics, but because eating food was disgusting. And then you had also people who wanted their entire genitals removed, not for gender affirming care, but because existing in a form that had needs was unacceptable. They weren't trying to become something else. They were trying to disappear entirely. And look, I'm not judging them because I have also, I understand it. I have also looked in the mirror before and wanted to scrap everything that I've seen. So I understand where they are coming from. But there is a big difference, especially when it comes to surgery and something like extreme body mods, with trying to reclaim yourself and trying to delete yourself. And I knew that I was enabling the latter more than the former. So I stopped doing it because I figured if I wouldn't hand somebody a razor to cut their arm, why the hell was I handing somebody a scalpel so that they could disfigure themselves in an even grander and frankly sometimes disabling manner? I still do believe in body autonomy and I believe in pushing the limits on what the body can mean. And I truly do believe that the human body is well overdue for a much needed update. But having dipped my toe into that world, I also do believe that a lot of what passes as mod culture is really just beautifully inked self-harm. Even now in the modern West, I think a lot of people are walking around with tattoos and piercings that are frankly trauma responses. Now, let me just be clear about this, okay, before you type an angry comment. I do not think that of all tattoos, and nor am I against them in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think that fully tattooed bodies, when they're done well, are beautiful works of art. And I think that piercings are hot, like stretches and dermals. I think that they can be extraordinarily empowering to people, again, when they are done well, but only when they're done well, with care and attention. When you invest in yourself, when you research artists and you research studios and you collaborate on drafts, when you take care of your skin and you moisturize properly and you only ever do these things in safe, clean environments with professionals who are performing these pieces of art with care and precision. When you allow yourself to heal properly because you are investing in your body like it's something worth preserving. But when you get tattooed on a whim in the backyard shed of some guy named Harry that you met on Facebook Live yesterday, who can barely draw a straight line and who houses his hamster cage on the tattoo bench when it's not in use, and who has never worn gloves a single time in his entire life, that is not art. That is not empowering. That is Darwinism. Please, for the love of Robin Williams, do not pierce your septum on the toilet at 2 a.m. with a disposable cartridge that you bought off Temu. Just don't. I think I might start doing reaction videos, to be honest, on, bad tattoos and shady piercings and extreme body mods gone wrong. Not to shame, but just to educate, to open a dialogue about why we do the things that we do and what we're hoping they will fix. Anyway, we will see. I don't know if that's really something that I'm going to end up doing because I would need to find a way to get videos. But I see a lot of really bad piercing and tattoo videos, especially, and a lot of ink sclera videos, which is the stupidest thing that you could ever do, especially the way that they do them. Again, this is if I do a video, I would dive deeper into it. I don't know if I'm going to, but for now, as always, this is Casey signing off for the night. As always, stay weird out there, stay safe, and stay far, far away from portable piercing cartridges because you are just aiming for a cartilage injury, and then you can come see me at my shitty little hospital in the middle of nowhere, and I will not be kind about it. I will laugh at you because that is what you deserve if you pierce yourself like an idiot.